Ladies and gentlemen, today we are here to talk about the new Final Destination movie, Final Destination Bloodlines, directed by Zach Lipovsky and Adam Steen, starring Caitlin Santawana and T.O. Browns. Not confident in those pronunciations, but when am I ever? So leading up to this film's opening night, I decided to rewatch the entire Final Destination series, 1 through 5, all 5 films, and after doing so, I've come to the conclusion that I love this franchise. There's so many horror movie franchises that just have been milked to death with so many unnecessary bland copy and paste sequels, and although Final Destination isn't exactly immune to that, part 4, I do think it has such a simple, fun concept that's so elastic. There's so much potential you can do with its premise. Not in terms of plot really, but in terms of its strongest aspect, which is the deaths and the on-screen violence. Now, a lot of people would agree that the last 2 installments, before Bloodlines, so part 4 and 5, they would say that those movies are where the quality in the Final Destination films kind of drops. And to an extent, I kind of agree, kind of don't agree. I don't like part 4. You'll probably be hearing that a lot throughout this video. I do like part 5. I think part 5 is extremely underrated. You'll be hearing my reasonings as to why I feel the way I do about part 4 and part 5 in my next video when I rank the Final Destination movies 1 through 6, aka Bloodlines. That'll be my next video. Be on the lookout for that. But one thing was noticeable. At least for general audiences at the time, people were getting kind of tired of the Final Destination formula. In a matter of a decade, they pumped out 5 Final Destination movies, last one to come out in 2011, so now we ask ourselves, why should we go see the new one? Is it going to offer us anything new? Is it going to be any different? Will this new one have the juice? Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to say this movie has the juice. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. We are so back. No shade to Alien Romulus, but somebody should go tell Alien Romulus this is how you make a fun, original, unique sequel in your horror series. I say original and unique because while it still does feel like a Final Destination movie, it doesn't feel like a soulless, copycat, needless rebrand, part 4. It does something unique by taking the Final Destination formula that we are so familiar with at this point, and I'm not going to say it flipped it on its head entirely, but it tweaked it to the right amount to where it feels like a brand new, fresh installment in the series that deserves its place in the series. And it also stayed true to the Final Destination franchise. I think it was the smartest thing this movie could have done. I keep bringing up the Final Destination formula. Here is the Final Destination formula in all these films. At the beginning, there's always a disaster that kills a lot of people. Our protagonist has a premonition of said disaster, and they convince a few people to escape with them before the disaster actually happens. The disaster happens, whether that be an airplane exploding or a roller coaster malfunctioning and killing everybody on the ride. Our cast of characters survive because of the warning by our protagonist. However, they cheated death. And death itself does not like to be cheated in these movies, so one by one, in the order that they were supposed to die in, they start dying in the most ridiculous, absurd, bloody ways you can think of. This is what I mean when I said earlier that the premise is very elastic. You can do so much with the creativity of the kills and how these characters die, and that's made quite clear in the franchise. With every FD film, you can at least rely on the deaths trying to be a bit more creative than the last, trying to be a bit more insane or jaw-dropping or just fun. Well, besides part 4. I fucking hate part 4. The creativity with the kills is just so alive in this movie. But even before discussing the kills, let's talk about how going off stray from the standard FD formula was probably the smartest thing that they could have done with this movie. Now, I'm walking on eggshells here because I don't want to talk about any spoilers, but to talk about what makes this movie feel so unique and special in the franchise, I kind of have to go into very minor spoilers to discuss the premise. So that's what I'm going to do, but before you click off, I do have timestamps in the description. You can go ahead and skip to the next time code if you don't want to hear anything. But again, I reiterate, these are very, very minor spoilers. Only gonna spoil, if anything, the beginning of the film, but that's because what happens in the beginning kicks off the entire plot. I'm not gonna discuss who dies. I'm not gonna talk about the ending. I promise I would not ruin the cinematic experience for you. But either way, this is your spoiler warning, your very minor spoiler warning. 3, 2, 1. What makes Bloodlines stand out is in the beginning disaster, we are no longer following the protagonist who has the premonition. we're following her granddaughter decades after the disaster happens. The reason being is because during the premonition, the grandma's pregnant. She was not meant to live that day. She was not meant to have that baby. Her premonition saves her, so she does have the baby. Her baby starts a family, and then that family has a family. So now the premise of this movie is death is coming back to essentially end this entire bloodline. That's all I'm gonna say. Those are the very minor spoilers I had to talk about, but trust me, after binging the first 5 films and then this one, it really does stand out. It's really a fun little spin on the FD formula. What I also like about this movie is how much more story-driven it feels compared to some of the other films. Obviously, the kills are still the biggest draw, but even between the kills, those scenes, they're not bad either. This being the longest Final Destination movie with a runtime of almost 2 hours is paced fairly well. You're never too bored. The characters are a lot more lively and likable and fun to watch. And the dynamics are a bit more interesting than the standard teenage friend group full of sluts and douchebags that we usually get in this franchise. And the kill scenes in this movie are flat out awesome. Each one feels very distinct and thought out, and they really flesh them out by introducing so many variables, so many different ways a character can die, and then they'll just pull a 180 on you. Which I know a lot of the kills in the series go like that, but Bloodlines really seem to put an even bigger emphasis on the fleshed out, on the build-up aspects of those scenes. I also do like how in some aspects it got pretty meta. The script was poking fun at the FD formula, talking about, oh, what if that guy on the ladder falls off and then the soccer ball comes and hits that lady and then that fucking lady has a heart attack which scares the dog. It was funny, it was charming how they were acknowledging, we know how ridiculous but fun these deaths are. Now, some of the digital work in this movie is distracting. I'll say straight up bad at some points, but in a roundabout way, if you're being optimistic, you can kind of see that as a pro because of how uncanny, and again, bad, I'll say some of the VFX looked, mixed with a lot of the graphic bloody gore. It can still be a very shocking image to look at. Like, my jaw was on the floor. I was like, what the fuck am I seeing? I watched this film with my friend Cameron, and I kid you not, after every single death, we looked at each other like, but do not take this as cope. I'm just explaining why I didn't completely ruin my cinema experience. But I do understand there are several times where this movie does showcase bad CGI. And that is a con. The entirety of the VFX wasn't completely dog shit, but the bad effects were a bit more prevalent than what I would have preferred. Like, we're in the year 2025. I know CGI artists can be rushed or underpaid or overworked, but I mean, that's the studio's problem that they need to fix, because some of the VFX in this movie, I'm like, bro, it could have looked better than that. But yeah, the absurd creativity of the kills are really fun. They carry this movie, but it's also just well paced. The story feels more fresh and interesting. The characters, again, I reiterate, are a lot more likable. They're not just annoying, flat, pessimistic assholes. Part 4. I really did enjoy the character of Eric, played by Richard Harmon. Highlight performance of the film for me. It gives off very Roman Roy, which around here we always enjoy a lovable asshole type of character. The acting overall was pretty good, which is one of the few critiques I would have for this franchise, because there's a lot of dog shit acting in the Final Destination movies.
No! Don't you see? This is where I was supposed to be in the first place, not that stupid race. Wait, I was meant to see this movie.
And trust me, there's more where that came from, unfortunately. Especially with part 4, but thank God there's not a whole lot of that in Bloodlines. And of course, I did not expect that very surprising, touching scene of the late Tony Todd. Beautifully worded dialogue. It definitely felt like it was Tony Todd speaking to us rather than his character. And with the context surrounding him, I thought it was a very beautiful, well-handled scene. It really makes you wish more horror sequels can show that much respect to its deceased actors, to its deceased legends. Alien Ramos. Fuck me. Very fun, absurd, silly horror. You're gonna have a good time watching this, as did I. I'm gonna give Final Destination Bloodlines a 7 out of 10. I would recommend this movie. I really had a good time with it, and I'll probably rewatch it soon. Maybe this time with my girlfriend. Awesome person. She's super smart, talented, giant round ass. Anywho, for the similar recommendation, I'm going to be going with a earlier 2025 release, The Monkey, directed by Osgood Perkins, starring Theo James and Rohan Campbell. I thought this was a pretty good underloved horror comedy with a very similar premise to a Final Destination movie. In The Monkey, we follow two twin brothers who are tormented by a creepy, cursed toy monkey who has the power to start causing random violent deaths to anybody and everybody who's around. Similar to what Death does in the Final Destination movies, but instead think of Death personified as a toy monkey. This is the same director of Longlegs. Couldn't be any more different than Longlegs. Tone-wise, it's going for more of a black comedy. Emphasis on the comedy. The deaths in this movie, I don't want to say are as ridiculous as some of the Final Destination deaths. They're more, I'll say, straight up goofy. A lot of the kills in this movie are just silly, but that's what it's going for. It's not trying to make you scared of going on an airplane or a roller coaster or getting in a tanning bed. It's just a silly horror comedy filled with people getting blown up, burned alive, or just gutted. The humor worked for me in this film. I know humor is subjective. Some people may find it annoying with how many times the brother calls the other brother loser dipshit. I saw the genius in that because I myself say dipshit a lot, so I was thinking, oh, this movie, it's speaking to me. But yeah, in general, just a very underrated 2025 horror movie. It wasn't the best thing ever, but it probably will make my most underrated films of 2025 once I make that video. I had fun with it. It's directed by Osgood Perkins, and when you watch an Os Perkins film, you know you're going to be getting at least solid acting, solid cinematography, which are two aspects of The Monkey. If you are a fan of the over-the-top, ridiculous kills in the Final Destination movies, highly recommend you give The Monkey a try. Alright everybody, that does it for this video. Thank you to everybody who watched. Again, we are trying to hit 1,000 subs by summertime. The clock is ticking, no rush, but please subscribe. Either way, I am forever grateful. I love doing this channel. Next video should be a ranking of the Final Destination films, 1 through 6, and maybe even a tier list of the Final Destination deaths, of each death in every single film. That might come out soon, but definitely be on the lookout for the ranking. Speaking of ranking, I'm going to be binging the Mission Impossible movies just in time to watch the last one. I believe it's The Final Reckoning. That should be coming out, I think, at the end of this week. So expect the review on that film and, of course, the ranking of the Mission Impossible franchise. I know I was going to do a Thunderbolts review, but it's already been 2-3 weeks. I don't know if anybody wants to see that. If you would like to, I have the script ready. Go ahead and comment if you would like that. If not, by all means, I'm grateful that you watched. Thank you for watching. And as always, I'll see you at the next one.